It's really important to knead your clay, especially if you're going to be throwing on the wheel. You know, we get our clay from a bag and it's been through a machine which has been de-airs all the clay. But, you know, sometimes you will get your clay from the ground and so you'll have to put a bit more elbow grease into it. However, even when you've got it from a bag, the clay kind of settles a little bit, and to help you with your throwing, it's a really good idea to knead it. So I'm going to take a large piece of clay off this, and I'm going to show you so you can see on a larger size first how to knead this. So I would probably start, so I'm just going to start by giving this a little bit of a bang, just to get all the clay particles moving a little bit. I'm working on a plaster bench, which is good. Sometimes, you know, if you're working on laminate or something like that, the clay's going to stick to it and it won't knead as easily. Plaster's really good. Otherwise, compressed concrete is really good, or a piece of fibro. So if you're working in a studio at home, you know, you can, even if you have just a 6mm piece of fibro, a square of fibro, that will make the kneading process on a good solid table a lot easier. So I'm just giving this a bit of a bang around just to get it moving because it's fresh out of the bag. And then I'm going to start to do some rocking. So the main thing is we don't want to put air into this. Now, if I turn around, I'll start to show you that this right hand is creating the spiral and this left hand is creating the cone. So the left hand is is pushing, but it's not folding, it's sort of rocking and pressing. You're not kneading it like a loaf of bread because we don't want it to rise. We want it to just to start working it into this sort of circular shape. This takes a lot of practice. It stumps people all the time how to knead, so you just have to practice. When you start, quite often you put more air in than you'll take out, and that's why coning on the wheel, when we start on the wheel, that's a good idea to also help to do this process. But can you see how this is where you're rolling over and it's just sort of squeezing down, and this hand here is doing the turning. So it's not really... So this is on a large scale of clay, and you can still see how it's just getting these little squeezes. So once you've sort of done that, if you're working on, say, you're making a run of cups, we could roll that. So if you're making a big piece, that would be your cone to start with. But say you're making a run of cups, we could roll this down into a... Because we have to sort of, you want to get the clay plate that's a little bit looser anyway. If we get this rolled into a cylinder, just by doing some little rocks. We can then measure the clay out, because it doesn't matter if the clay's not exactly 400. You know, if they're all sort of between 390 and 410, or, you know, 385, it's not a very big difference. So we can get this happening here. I'll cut that in half to start with. I'll grab my scales. Take one of these. So that's 1,800. So if I divide that into 4, that's about $4.25 per piece. So we'll just roll this out, or $4.50. $4.50. So if you're making cups are now $4.50, then you'd go, okay, I'm going to divide this into 4. Now I'm going to cut the end off that one. It's got a bit of a hole through there. All right. And then you can measure it. You can just do it by eye. And then these pieces, they're all kind of similar. So that's an easier way of doing it than to just start cutting off the block of clay, you know, and adding bits and trying to, you know, because you get more air bubbles. The more you add on, more little pieces you start adding, the more air bubbles you get on. And so now that this is started being kneaded, then we can give these pieces a little bit of a knead again. So again, doing it on a smaller scale, here's the spiral, and this hand is doing the press, a little press just to, and it's really just rocking. So it's not kneading, it's just sort of rocking and a slight turn and a rock. There's lots of different ways of kneading, and again, this was the way in the end that suited me. Then I roll that around so that you've got your spiral happening here. That's going to be on the wheel and go with the wheel as make it easier. So when you put that on the wheel, all the clay is going in the right direction. And that is how I knead my clay.